Each year, athletes from across the globe converge on Haines City, Florida, test the limits of their bodies and the resilience of their spirits at Ironman Florida 70.3. This documentary invites you behind the scenes of an athlete's return to triathlon after a forced 4-year hiatus, a story of grit, ambition, and unwavering dedication. From early morning swims to relentless training rides beneath the hot and humid summer sun and pounding footfalls on winding roads, we will witness the evolution of a competitor with a humble and grateful heart striving for redemption. But this is more than a race. It is a voyage through adversity and triumph. Through moments of doubt and bursts of inspiration, there will be setbacks and surprises, victories large and small, and the discovery of the true meaning of perseverance. Join us as we chronicle the milestones and missteps, the sweat and celebration culminating in one unforgettable day. This will not only be a tale of athletic determination, but a portrait of the human spirit, undaunted, unbreakable, and ever reaching for the extraordinary. Welcome to Ironman Florida 70.3, an endurance athlete's journey. Welcome to Ironman Florida 70.3, an endurance athlete's journey. So we are in week 2 of the training plan. So thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen and follow along with my preparation for Ironman Florida 70.3. Overall, it was a pretty solid week. I'm going to bring up some notes here. So at the end of last week's video, I talked about I was going to build a specific page within the Tabula Rasa racing website. That is up and running. It was actually up and running that night. I got kind of like a fifth wind and actually developed it. And so you can go out to Tabula Rasa Racing. That's TABULA RASA Racing. There is a page on there that says Ironman Florida 70.3. You will find each week's video at the top of the page. If you scroll down, you'll see pictures of my weekly workouts. So you'll see there's week 1 there, and week 2 is now up and running. And if you scroll a little bit below that, there is a downloadable PDF if you would like to download the workouts that I've done. So as a caveat, there is a disclaimer on there that this training plan was developed specifically for me, specifically for my expectations and my plans for this race, based on my current level of fitness. So any kind of adoption of the training plan is at your own risk. This does not constitute a coach-athlete relationship. But you are free to use it. I told myself from the very beginning of this that I was going to be completely transparent, and that includes the training, the specific details of each of my workouts, the structures, and so forth, and all of the emotions that I'm kind of going through. And this week, I'll talk a little bit more about kind of like what I kind of went through this week, being completely vulnerable in this series. Being on camera is already an uncomfortable place for me. And so opening up and being completely vulnerable in terms of like the emotional side of this and kind of like my innermost thoughts during training is even more uncomfortable. But this is a growth opportunity for me as an athlete, and I'm willing to do hard things, as I've proved to myself over and over again. And this is one of those hard things that I feel like I have to do in order to grow as a coach and as an athlete, as a man of faith. And so this is the process that I'm going through. So again, thank you so much for joining. So week 2 had a total of 16 and a half hours planned. That is spread across swim, bike, run, and strength sessions. And I came in at 16:39, so pretty well executed. I only missed one session this week, and that was a 20-minute core session. It was because I ran out of time and I had to get home to take my son to school, and I just did not have time to get that back in. So I missed a 20-minute core, so it's not that bad. So pretty happy about my success rate in terms of executing the plan. Let's just jump right in. So I want to talk about each component of their training plan and how it went. I can't remember if last week I started with swimming, but this week I'm going to start with the run. So overall, I think I had a successful run week. I started off the week feeling pretty uncomfortable in my feet and in my ankles. And I'll give you a little bit of backstory here. At the advice and consultation with my orthopedic surgeon, I did talk to him about the implementation of anti-inflammatories during my training process. And so he suggested that I could do 12 days on and 12 days off. So this is a prescription anti-inflammatory to help me manage some of the shoulder pain in this shoulder and some of the Achilles issues and just overall inflammation that I've got going on. So that's what I've been implementing is 12 days on, 12 days off. When I get close to the end of the 12-day cycle, it's really, really, I'm not even going to say it's uncomfortable. It's downright painful, just the mobility and my movement. And so I will say, like, this week I was supposed to cycle back on, and I think it was supposed to be like around Wednesday or Thursday, but I think it was like around on Tuesday evening, I caved and started a day early. I was in a lot of pain. And so I think I might adjust this implementation and maybe go 12 days on, 6 days off. Because by the time I get to that end of the 12 days, it's pretty rough. And just for quality of life and being able to execute this plan, I think I'm going to shorten that and just do 6 days off. 6 days off, really, I start to feel the effects of training when I'm about 3 days off. And so I figure by 6 days, the meds are pretty much out of my system. And so I should be good, I think, to roll back on. After this plan is over, I'll still circle up with him and reevaluate and see what we're going to do going forward, and maybe just go back to the 12 on, 12 off. But we'll see what happens. We'll jump off that bridge when we get to it. But back to the run. I think my run was successful this week. I had a pretty solid Sunday run, which can be suspect because Saturday and Sundays are such big volume days. And so Monday can be a little sketchy and kind of uncertain, but I pushed some good paces and did it outdoors. A lot of my plan is implemented with treadmill runs because of the absorption of the treadmill. I can run with higher frequency on the treadmill just because it absorbs the shock, so it's a little bit easier on my body. But I'm trying to make a conscientious effort to get outside more often now. So I think I did all of my runs except for one outside this week. So that is a significant improvement for me. I know it's important because it will help strengthen the ankles because when you run on a treadmill, it's just simply flat. And so the foot makes the same contact over and over and over again. But the way that the road is shaped and the camber of the road and the way it slopes off, sometimes if you're running, in the shoulder, your feet are kind of like an angle. And so that undulation in the road and the way that it changes will help strengthen the ankles, but it is hard on the body, or hard on my body, I'll say. I'm not going to speak for everyone. But, Monday was a little challenge. That first interval was a little rough, but I saw as the run progressed, things kind of eased up. But by the time I got to the last interval, my ankles were kind of screaming at me a little bit, so I was glad to be done. I'm doing a lot of mental work on the run. I'm trying to block out the discomfort that I feel so that I don't let the negative talk creep in, which can happen on race day when you don't have music, which tends to be a distraction in terms of blocking pain signals or just taking your mind somewhere else. You can focus on the music, but on race day you don't have that. It's against the rules triathlon to go with music, and so you're left to the voices that are in your head and where they take you. And so I think this is good practice for me to allow myself to go to these places and then block out kind of like the negative talk. We're all going to feel uncomfortable on race day by the time that we're running. And so you have to be willing to go to that place to be uncomfortable. And what I have found before is, even though I believe I am mentally strong, there are times where I cave early. And even though I finish the race, I don't push myself as much as I could. And so I don't get to see the kind of performance that I know that I'm capable of. So right now I'm really focusing on building that mental strength and being able to push through it and go to that dark place and just be fine with it. So I'm going to kind of like read through my notes here to make sure that I'm staying on track. I'm working on good form. So I feel like the time that I've spent in the weight room is paying dividends, especially when I start to feel that discomfort in my heels. I really start to pay attention on how my foot is making contact with the ground. So I want to make sure that, because if you have any kind of plantar fascia issues, you'll notice that as that side of, if it's on the side of the heel or kind of like in the back, you'll start to change how your foot makes contact with the ground, because it's your body's way of trying to protect itself. So it's trying to soften that impact, that highly damaged area. And so it's trying to protect itself. So what I try to do is when I start to feel that discomfort, I really focus on getting that clean foot strike. So that means engaging the tripod of the foot. So you're engaging the big toe, the other toes, and then the back of the foot. And so you're really trying to make solid contact with the ground, roll through and toe off. What I've noticed that is I start to disengage my big toe and I start to land on the side of the foot because I'm trying to protect the side that's damaged. And it makes things worse, actually, because then you start to get overuse injuries in other places and it just kind of snowballs. And so not only are you having to deal with one issue, but now it starts like 2 and 3 issues because you're altering your gait and you're altering your strike. And so I'm really focusing on when I start to feel it heat up, engage the toes. And then I start to notice that once I start to make nice solid contact with the ground, the pain starts to subside a little bit and it kind of eases. So that's a good cue for me on race day. When I start to feel uncomfortable is just to make sure, hey, engage the toe so that I'm not lifting it off the ground and not really following through with that roll through the foot strike. So let's see. I will say that I want to caveat this with, I do have enough experience behind me to know when I can push and when I have to shut things down. So running through discomfort is part of the game. So this is all what we have to do. And there's no way around it. But there's a difference between running through discomfort and running through pain. There are times where I'm running through pain. As a coach, I am cognizant of that, and I'm a lot more conservative with my athletes. I wish that I could be more conservative with myself, but I do know when my body has had enough. I know when I can push, and I know when I can't push, and things just need to get shut down. I have been blessed with other people in my life that have really kind of had like these moments with me. It's like, look, you have to shut things down. You're really going to hurt something. And those have been highly appreciative and highly needed. But I feel like I'm getting better at recognizing when I'm reaching that boundary of, damage versus just trying to push through it and build a little bit more adaptation, just having to manage it. Because if I waited for my body to feel completely healthy and completely fine and 100%, I don't think I would ever be able to do anything. I have not been blessed with the type of body that gives me that. But I am willing to do hard things. And so I am making do with the body that I've been given and trying to make it better, make it stronger, make it more durable. So I'm doing the work. But these are the cards that I've been dealt, and I'm willing to play the hand. So I will say my Saturday. So a little bit of a story is I drove down, I live on the south side of Richmond, Virginia, and I drove down to Williamsburg, Virginia for the day. There was a race that's down there, and I had done a similar course race back in June, and this was the Kinetic Patriot Olympic race. And it's a great opportunity. Coach Katie and I were hosts of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and we had some promotional bookmarks made up with a little QR code that takes you to our podcast website. And I just wanted to do some promotions. And so I decided to go ahead and take these bookmarks and take them down to the race venue and, pass them out to people and really try and have conversations and start things up and, really kind of step outside of my comfort zone, because I am an introvert by nature. Like pretty significant introvert. So I'm not very good at starting conversations. So it's something that I'm trying to learn and execute. And so I got done and I was like, I'm just going to go pass out these bookmarks and force myself to talk to people and really try and engage, build connection and see what happens. And then I was going to do my run and my ride after kind of like the race was over. So I had a really, really, really bad week at my job. And so it was extremely stressful, mentally draining. And by the time Saturday rolled around, I was so balled up with anxiety and just tension that I got down to the race and stood there for a little bit, and I cheered on a couple people, coming in off the bike. And, I'm one of the members of Team Zoot from Zoot Sports, and there's cheering on, fellow teammates and stuff like that. And I really kind of struggled to really start up conversations. And so I called it. I was just kind of like standing there basically, frozen. And so I said, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and I'm going to do my run on the run course with people. And, my run was significantly shorter than what the race was going to be, but at least I could go out there and encourage people and say, great job, good job, which is also outside of my comfort zone. I'm usually kind of a quiet racer. But I will say it was a good experience. I actually went out there and was running and encouraging people, and it made me feel better. And so I started to feel a little bit of heat in the feet, but, it wasn't too bad. It was a really hot day, hot and humid by the time this was going on. And so my paces were a little bit slow. They were slower than they were last week. And so I just kind of shrugged it off. That's something that is hard for me. But I backed off on the effort and made a conscientious decision to go out and just kind of like do my run, control the effort, and encourage those that were out there on the course. And so I think ultimately it was successful, and that was a great way. It was a good way to try and end my run week from week 2. Okay, so now let's talk about the bike. So this is kind of like my bread and butter of the plan. This is where, a lot of my focus is, because this is the stuff that I can do well. And so I would say that I had a pretty solid week on the bike. I had some good intensity in the training plan this week, a little bit more, well, not a little bit, quite a bit more than what I had last week. So I did some calculations, and about 70% of my bike workouts was done in zone 1 to zone 3. So it's that, kind of like warm up zone to like a tempo effort, which means about 30% of the plan was in threshold to zone 5. So that zone 4, zone 5 area, which is a pretty good mix. I know there's a lot of talk and the popularity from the 80-20 method, but I can say that I'm not particularly a prescriber for the 80-20 method. I understand the concept and I understand the principles, but I don't think that you have to be so strict and rigid that, 80% needs to be in zone 2, because some of that 80% for me would be in zone 3, kind of like this tempo, focused effort. And I think that's a good mix. I handled the intensity well, and I think it's good for me to kind of push that effort on the bike and really kind of like step outside and get into that uncomfortable place and go into the zone 4 and zone 5 efforts. I will say that, I ride with a power meter. So there's 2 ways that you can increase power, right? You can either increase the gearing that you have. So go from an easier gear to a harder gear. If you maintain your cadence, your power will rise. You could maintain gear and just pedal faster, i.e. increase your cadence, and that will also increase your power. So this week, what I kind of focused on with the higher intensity was I wanted faster cadence. So I was fueling this power cadence driven rather than gearing driven. And I think that's a good decision for me, given the race that I'm training for. Florida has been described as a rolling course. But then, the rolling nature of it is like the elevation really isn't all that significant. And I'm training on elevation that is a lot more than what I'm going to see in Florida. So, I want to be able to hold these higher cadences for longer periods, because I think that that's going to give me the best bang for my buck, biggest return on investment. is being able to push the cadence and not necessarily just ride with the hardest gear that I can push. That has rarely worked for me because it really kind of sabotages the run. So I've been really working over the past few years on being able to ride at a higher cadence, which forces me to ride at an easier gear, but it really sets me up well to run well off of the bike. So we'll kind of see. It's kind of an experiment, and as athletes, even as coaches, we have to be willing to experiment and see how things work, what works, what doesn't work, and be okay with it. And I'm willing to experiment. So I still had a big gear session that was in there this week because I think that that's really important to still maintain some kind of structural, functional strength work. I love low cadence efforts. I am a smasher by nature. I love it. And so, I keep that in my plan. And there was one session that was in there this week where I said, I calculated it's like 50%, 53% of that workout was in zone 4. So I think that was a 40 to 60 minute session. I can't remember which one it was. But, 53%, over half of that session was spent in big gear, zone 4 effort with a solid cadence. My cadence was anywhere between 50 to 55. That was my cadence target. And if memory serves correctly, I was on the upper end of that target, which actually surprised me that I was able to push the higher cadence, because typically where I've been is in the lower 50s and still being able to get into the zone 4 area, but now I'm able to push at a higher cadence, which is just pure strength and muscular endurance. And that's where the weight room work is really paying dividends, and I'm really happy to see that. So this week was a really successful bike. So let's talk about the long bike session. I still executed a 3 hour and 15 minute long ride. I started in Williamsburg and rode out back towards Richmond. And I got in just right around 57 miles. Last week it was about 63 or 63, 64. And I think I paid the price. And last week I talked about how I executed that workout poorly. And, coaches do it, experienced athletes do it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Sometimes, we get out there, and I will say that I feel like I rode hard last week because I felt like I wanted to prove something to myself, even though it's completely stupid and ridiculous to do that, especially this early into a training plan, to try and convince myself, hey, you still got it. You can do this. This isn't going to be as hard as you think it's going to be. And I paid the price. I really struggled at the end of that ride, and it really it dug a bit of a deeper hole than what I would have liked. And I paid the price that evening where I was kind of just out of it. I was completely cooked. And so this week I wanted to execute it differently. I took the ego out and said, look, if I get close to 56 miles, that's great. I just want to ride for 3 hours and 15 minutes. I want to ride within my fitness. I'd like to see an overall kind of like mid to high zone 2 average power with my normalized power tends to run a little bit higher. And I was like, I'd be okay with my normalized power being in that zone 3 range. And that's exactly what I saw. My average power was like mid zone 2. I had a solid cadence of about 80 to 80. I think it was like 81 to 82 RPMs, and that was overall cadence. And so over 3 hours and 15 minutes, I was still able to go above 80 RPM, still kept it in zone 2, and my normalized power was in zone 3. And so I feel like I executed that ride really, really well. I have to take the ego out of it, and I didn't get as far as I went last week, and I wasn't as fast as I was last week, but that's not the point. That's not the point of the ride. It's not the point of the workout. And so, sometimes I just have to check myself. And I believe that there's a lot of other people that are out there that are ego training and going out there feeling like they have to prove themselves to themselves. I could care less what people on Strava, what they think of my workouts. I could absolutely care less. But I do want to feel like I'm making progress. And the only way that I interpret that within my own head is like, oh, am I getting faster? Am I seeing higher power? Am I seeing a higher cadence? What are some of the metrics that I'm using? And that's something that I'm personally working on, is not to have the need of always seeing or perceiving some kind of forward progress or progression. I would be much happier with executing the proper workout and the purpose behind the workout, and really kind of like following through with that rather than chasing something that I feel like I have to prove. Because quite honestly, I shouldn't have to prove anything to myself. I've been doing this long enough. I've done enough races to where I know that I can do this. I shouldn't have to prove that I can perform, especially this early in a training plan. This is week 2. So there's no reason to prove that I can go out. It's like, hey, I can ride the 56 miles and close to my goal time already. That's absolutely ridiculous. And that's how so many people sabotage their training, is trying to win at training. Because if you're winning at training, you're not winning on race day. So it's something that I'm trying to work on. I feel like I executed the nutrition plan on the bike really pretty well. Last week, I got off the bike and I was feeling kind of nauseous, a really kind of an upset, uneasy stomach, testing out just a new product, not a new, I stuck with the same company. I think it's just a different mix that I'm trying, because I really want to go out with only 2 bottles of nutrition, so I don't have to do any refills and stuff like that while out there on the course. I've only got 2 bottle cages on my back in my rear hydration system, so that's all I want to carry. It's just 2 bottles. So I'm trying to train my stomach, train my gut to handle those 2 bottles within the time that I have set to complete the bike portion and get in the necessary carbs and calories that I need. So last week, I feel like that was a bit of a struggle. And so I tell myself, look, you're just training the gut. We're trying something new. Let's just keep at it. This week, I tried a different flavor, because I bought 2 different flavors, and this time it worked pretty well. Actually, I got off the bike and I wasn't feeling nauseous. I wasn't feeling sick. And so I feel like I executed that well, even though the conditions were harsher this week than they were last week. I finished the bike workout on Saturday, and it was 90 degrees with 70-degree dew point. Those are pretty challenging conditions to be out there for that long and that kind of sustained effort. So I think last week what I saw is maybe riding at a little bit too high of an intensity with using a new product that I hadn't tested out yet, and I just wasn't ready to be executing that kind of intensity. This week I dropped the intensity, still used the same kind of mix, just a different flavor. And with that lower intensity, I think my body was able to absorb things well. And so, but when I did finish, I completely emptied all of my fluids during that ride. So, like I said, I have two 20-ounce bottles that I can carry in my rear hydration system. I also have a 40-ounce tank that is bolted within the frame of my bike. So it's just the speed fill, like 40-ounce tank. And that is what I just carry, just clear plain water in. So I drank that whole 40 ounces. I drank the 40 ounces that I carried on the back, and I was really, really thirsty when I got off the bike, and ended up packing up, heading home, and stopped by the 7-Eleven. I got 2 really large, kind of like Deer Park kind of water bottles, and I drank both of them on the way home. And it was about an hour and 20-minute drive. So to drink that much fluid just in an hour and 20 minutes, that tells you a little bit how, I don't want to say like dehydrated I was, but I was just really thirsty and just really kind of just sucked it down. This week I did pack food to eat on the ride home, and I planned accordingly just in case my stomach was going to be upset. So I didn't pack anything sweet, because normally what I'll do is I'll have a protein bar and kind of like a little pre-made, like ready to drink protein shake that I just keep in a cooler with some ice. But last week I wasn't having it. I wasn't having anything sweet. And so I ended up stopping someplace and getting something which probably wasn't ideal. So this week I packed like a big like ham and cheese sandwich. And like I said, I stopped off and, got some water from the 7-Eleven. And so I was glad that I did that, because I think it's just that change in, palatable food, going from sweetened things like the hydration mixes that we use. And, if you use any gels and gummies and, things like that and waffles, the palate, you can have that palate fatigue. And so I think having something that kind of reverses that palate fatigue to eat on the way home so that I'm not like starving and like stopping to get something, which would be less than ideal. I think it was a good plan. And I'm glad that I did it and enjoyed the sandwich immensely. So I do know that because I am consuming all of my fluids, and right now my ride is right around my goal time for Ironman Florida. Really, I would like to see like a 3 hour bike. So right now I'm 15 minutes over kind of like what my goal time is. I'm not set on it. I'm not married to it, but that's just kind of what I would like to see. And I'm consuming all of my fluids within that 3 hours to 3 hour and 15 minutes. So I know that I'm going to have to take stuff off of the race course. And I've just come to the conclusions like, I'll just take water, and I can just grab like clear water bottles from aid stations on the bike and dump it to the tank that I've got on my frame and be good. And I'll stick with my own electrolytes. I know it works for me. I don't know what they're going to have on the course. I have looked. I've always been like self-sufficient on the course because I have such a unique digestive system that I just don't trust things out on the course. And so, that's the method that I'm going to go with. So I'm fine with just taking water, dumping it in a tank, and then dumping the empty bottle, at the end of the aid station, and, keeping that tank topped off as much as I can. I'm willing to take the extra weight of carrying the fluid, but I'd much rather carry that and then get off the bike not being super thirsty and being able to drink as I would want to drink and not drink just like, now I'm out. So now what do I do? So that's the plan. So let's move on to the swim. Again, I think the run went well. So that's a bonus. That's a check for the pro column. The bike went well, executed well. That's a check for the bonus, for the good column for the week. The swim was kind of a mixed bag. I have 3 swims in my plan. One is an effort swim, one is kind of like a functional strength swim, and then one is an endurance swim. And that's the way that I have it structured. The effort swim was really, really hard. And it's a workout that I've done many times. So I know that I can do it. I just think that my body at that point was so fried that my shoulder was really hurting. My elbows were on fire a little bit, and the stress from work and everything and life and everything else that was going on, I just reached my breaking point. So, my workout should take about an hour, but I was actually in the pool I was in the water for like an hour and a half. It was super long. I felt like I was there forever. But, I would do an interval, and then I would take a pretty significant break and then do the next interval. And I do that because I want to swim with good form. So I'm not interested in just like, I'm not interested in like building a good work and getting a good workout with, aerobic benefit and things like that, where it's just like, I just want to keep my heart rate elevated. Because my opinion is, why swim with bad form? I want to learn and teach my body how to swim with good form. So if that means I need to take longer breaks in order to ensure that I start with good form and then try and hold on to that form as long as I can as I build muscular endurance, that's how you get better at swimming, not just continuing to swim with bad form just to check the box and just get it done as quickly as possible. That does you no good. And if anything, it actually gets you behind the 8 ball because you lose so much efficiency in the water. And how you capitalize on swimming is like, swimming is mostly technique driven. There is a huge like muscular endurance component to it because it's a full body workout, trying to keep the core engaged, to keep the feet up. And, you're trying to pull the water that's in front of you and pull it behind you. And you get that early vertical forearm. So you got to get the rotation of your shoulder to get your hand in the right position to pull through. And so if you're not swimming efficiently, then you're expending a lot of effort to not go as fast and as far. And so it's sabotaging your own progress in the pool. So I'm willing to sit there for a little bit more to recover so that I can start the interval with good form. And I believe it's important to swim with some intensity in your plan. If you just go out there and just swim the same pace all the time and the same effort, and you say, why can't I get faster? Well, that's why you can't get faster, is because you're swimming at the same pace, the same effort. You're not tweaking things. You're not trying to find these efficiencies, because there's two ways to go faster. You can become more efficient so that you move further in the water with the same amount of output, same amount of power, or you just swim harder. And so that's how you go faster. But there's diminishing returns to just swimming harder. So it's not like you can just increase your cadence faster and faster and you will go faster. That is true to a certain extent, but there comes a point where it starts to dip down, and or an increase in cadence actually doesn't make you go any faster, because you may be shortening the stroke a little bit, so you're not pulling all the way through, because you're shortening it, and you're kind of shortening the recovery phase just to get the arm up and over again as fast as you possibly can, and that shortens the stroke, and you're not moving as much water, and so that's how you can swim at a higher cadence but not see the benefits of a faster pace. So for me, I wanted to swim with good form. And I think that was around the night where I really kind of broke and caved. And, I cycled back on to my anti-inflammatory, and, I started to feel better. By the time I got to the functional strength work a couple days later in the pool, that session went well. It wasn't anything notable about it. It's not like, wow, that was a great swim and I saw so much benefit. I just kind of like, it was kind of like I checked the box. Yes, I performed it. I did well. I had some descending intervals in there, so that was nice to see, even though I think it's written in there as a descend, but it was a nice descending. So it had some nice gaps in there, some nice spread. And so I was happy with the performance today. So I'm recording this on Sunday evening. So I had my endurance swim today after church, and that went pretty well, even though I saw slower paces. So a slower time during the intervals. That wasn't I didn't swim it with the purpose of trying to swim hard and see faster times. I wanted to execute this swim to where I felt like I could keep swimming. So I wanted to finish the workout with a lot in the tank. And that's how you want to get out of the water on race day. You don't want to get out of the water feeling like, man, I just swam hard and I put in a hard effort. You want to get out there saying, get out of the water, you're just like, man, I feel great. I don't feel like it really kind of like tapped into any kind of reserves. I feel like I could have kept swimming, and I feel strong and I feel fresh, and now I'm ready on the bike. If you sit at the exit ramp of the swim of many races, especially long races like mid-course, like 70.3, or long course, 140.6, full Ironman distance races, and you see the people, see the look on their faces, and they look like they've just been to war. You're like, she's gonna have that. They're gonna have a hard day. You can just see it right off the bat, and that's not what I want. I want to get out of the water feeling great and fresh with a full tank, ready to roll. And so this is what's needed. I am giving some consideration. So the way that I've kind of structured my plan going forward is I have a lot of pull buoy work and a lot of pull with paddle work, because I'm still trying to build that upper body strength, because Ironman Florida 70.3 is going to be a wetsuit legal swim. I don't think that I've seen any pictures where people aren't swimming in a wetsuit. It's December, so I would be really, really surprised if it's not wetsuit legal. Now, the only wetsuit that I have is the first wetsuit I ever bought. I did buy a second wetsuit right before COVID, And so I'm still trying to lose enough weight to get into that wetsuit. So I've yet to wear it. It's like, for all the ladies out there, you buy the black dress and you have it sitting in the closet and you're trying to, get to the point where you can wear it. That's me with that stupid wetsuit. I'm still trying to get into it, and I don't see it happening for this race. But like I said, I am a member of Team Zoot, and they just dropped their new wetsuits, and I get a pretty nice discount, and they have a sleeveless wetsuit that I'm kind of eyeballing. I think that would help me with my shoulder mobility and the strength issues that I've got in my shoulders, and because my wetsuit is full sleeved, and so I may be pulling the trigger on a sleeveless wetsuit. I think that might be the best move for me in my current situation. I'm still going to do the pull and paddle work just because I think that building up that muscular strength is super, super important, especially for me and where I am in my fitness and in my journey. I'm still trying to build that. And so I think it's important, but I am considering going sleeveless for the wetsuit. Okay, I think that kind of turned the page here of my notes. Yeah, so that kind of concludes the notes that I had for the swim. So I'll give that a mixed bag. So a check mark in the pro and a check mark in the con section of the tabs. And so, I'm still finishing the week pretty solid. So let's talk a little bit about my strength sessions. Like I said, I have 3 strength sessions in my plan. They're all about anywhere between 40 minutes to 60 minutes long. Sometimes they can be a little bit longer. It depends on how busy the gym is and, how many people I have to wait for machines and everything else. So, or how heavy I'm lifting and how much recovery I need in between sets, because I'm still aiming to do a progressive overload approach, even though I'm building muscular endurance. So if you go and you look at my strength workout, that is there, all the details are there, all the movements that I'm doing, my rep targets, and everything else. So you can see, in full disclosure, I am using a endurance method where my reps are high. So I'm aiming for 15 to 20 reps for sets. I have some supersets in there, in which case when I do supersets, I drop the rep count down to like 8 to 10 because you're really kind of burning out those muscles. But I'm still using a progressive overload approach. So each successive set is a higher weight. So I increase weight each additional set. And so they're like 3, I think they're 4 sets for the most of them. I think some of the supersets are only 3 sets because it's a superset, and going 4 sets isn't worth it. And so I can say that I had some pretty solid sessions in the weight room this week and seeing some nice progress there. Before I started this plan, I was lifting heavy a lot. And so I was going with like 8 to 10 reps, looking for failure. Even though, the guy that I work with for my strength stuff, he's still trying to convince me that I should look for failure, but I am very much a type A personality and I don't like to fail. So if I say I need 8 reps and I don't get to 8 reps, I feel like it was a failure, as in I didn't execute it well. But he's trying to instill in me, it's like, oh, well, you didn't get to 8 reps, but you got to 6 reps. That's great. So that's progress. We'll just stay there until you can get to the 8. And then once you can get that 2 rep reserve in the bank, then we can increase weight. So he's like, you're looking for failure. We want to push to failure. And so I'm still learning that method and trying to break my personality. My personality in the weight room. But I will say that the time that I have spent in the weight room is paying huge, huge dividends, way more than what I expected it to do. And I've put in a lot of work in the weight room to get stronger. And I'm seeing it in all 3 branches of triathlon. So I've made some notes here. For my swim, I'm seeing I have a much stronger back, and I'm getting a lot better back muscle engagement. So I'm really kind of feeling those lats kick in, and the traps, and all of it is just firing. And it's so nice to feel, because before when I was swimming, I carried it a lot into my shoulders, into the neck muscles that are here. And, as the form broke down, I could feel it heating up in my elbows and things like that. And it wasn't efficient. And it's not the muscles that we want to be engaged. But as I've spent more time in the weight room, I've been trying to teach these muscles to engage like they should and support the efforts of the swim. I'm feeling those back muscles kick in as I'm pulling through the stroke, and it feels good. I feel powerful. I feel strong. And so that is a huge benefit. On the bike is probably where I've seen some of the most benefits because I'm able to handle hills a lot better. I have, strong quads, and I'm able to like power through these hills without being completely gassed by the time that you crest the hill. I'm still able to ride in the seat and not go into like these simple, like easy gears. And I'm able to just kind of like muscle through it. And it depends on how long the hill and how long the race is. But on the kind of the strategy that you use to handle hills, but I am seeing huge benefits in power and strength. And so I'm also able, something that I've been working on is really developing that 360-degree pedal stroke. A lot of cyclists, and especially ones that are going to have the weaker legs, they only reap the benefits of half the stroke. So by the time that they get to the top of the pedal stroke, all they're doing is they're pushing down. So when this leg pushes down, this leg is coming up, and then all you get is the push down, push down, push down. Rather than push and lift, that requires the shift of engagement from quad to hamstring, and you're really bringing in the glutes and the calves. It's a full leg engagement. And so I'm starting to be able to execute that a little bit more effectively, where before I would just get super tired super fast if I tried to really engage that lift at the bottom of the pedal stroke. But now I can see that I'm starting to feel it, and I'm able to sustain the effort a little bit longer. And so that's a huge confidence boost as I'm able to increase my efficiency of the pedal stroke. And that's all comes from the weight room and just riding. My run, I've seen significant benefits, even though, I still struggle with the Achilles and the foot issues. But this past week, one of my runs, it was one of the longer runs that I've got. It's my moderate run is what I call it. I have short runs and moderate runs. I have no long runs in my training plan, and that's on purpose. And you have to go back to a previous episode where, I talk about why I'm doing it this way. But I can feel the strength in my glutes really kicking in because I was able to run hills this week with little effort and able to get to the top of the hill, where before I would run that exact same hill and I would be praying for the top of the hill. So that is a huge confidence boost that things are working. And, the time that I have spent, that I have sacrificed to do weights, and I've sacrificed aerobic conditioning in order to do weights because there's an opportunity cost associated with being in the weight room. If you're in the weight room, you can't be doing swim, bike, and run. So there's a cost to it. But for me, and my decision, I feel like the cost was worth it at this time. Once you start getting into kind of like, full Ironman distance training, then you start to have to really kind of think twice about, when is it appropriate to do weights? What part of the plan can we do it in? How much time can I dedicate to it? And when should it be removed? But for me, for 70.3, I'm still willing to do high volume stuff because I want to keep it in my plan. So if I have, around 1630 planned in terms of duration for my weekly training, where I have 3 strength sessions about an hour each, that's 3 hours. And so if I were to move that, then it really, like, my aerobic conditioning is about 13 hours. So that's pretty decent for a 70.3. And so I'm willing to put in the extra volume to see those strength gains because I know that I'm seeing it on the aerobic side. And so I think that's good. Nutrition wise, this week, I think I executed the nutrition plan fairly well. I'm still kind of struggling with some hunger, and I've talked with Coach Katie, and I think we're going to increase my caloric needs because really I've been trying to shed some of the weight because I feel like if I can lose some of the weight, then the impact to my joints would be lessened. And I've been telling myself, well, if I can just get stronger, then the joints will be able to handle the high demand that I put on them. But I'm not really kind of seeing that. So I'm not completely convinced that that method is working yet. I'm not saying that it won't or that it can't, but I've really wanted to try and drop some more weight as this opportunity came to race Ironman Florida 70.3. I have to put my desire to lose some of the additional weight on hold, because the restriction in calories is really kind of impacting the quality, not only the quality of my performance, but the quality of my life outside of training. So I'm tired a lot, grumpy, kind of dozing off here and there. I get frustrated with myself because I get hungry, and then I feel like, well, I end up eating something that's not on the plan, and then it's this vicious cycle. It's like, oh, well, you failed, you didn't execute the plan, and all that work that Katie did to give you a good nutrition plan, and you're caving because you're weak. That's all between these things right here. So this is all in my head, and so we're going to increase my caloric needs this coming week, and we're going to kind of see how that works. I know that I can still improve on sleep, so that's going to be another effort going forward. So that kind of wraps up, the kind of the insights that I have from the specific disciplines. There are two things that I would kind of like to read from my training journal. And, what I do is I use Training Peaks for me and my athletes. And so something that I haven't done in the past is to use the note feature within Training Peaks to kind of capture some of my thoughts and feelings. And I thought that I was going to be able to be disciplined and like write these notes like every single day, but that worked for like a week. The first week, this week it didn't quite pan out to where I got something written every day. But if there was something that I felt was important, I did write it and try and capture it. And so I do want to read two entries from that. So this is pretty personal stuff from me, and I'm being kind of vulnerable right here. But as I said before, this is an open eyes kind of approach to how I'm going about this, and so I have to be comfortable with this. All right, so we will start. Let's read from my journal. I've just got it up here on my other screen, and so I'm just going to read it. So this was on the 4th, which I think is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So this was about Thursday. And here's what I wrote. It said, "Today was a good training day. I'm feeling better than I have lately. The meds are really helping. I felt good throughout both of my sessions today. It feels good to move without so much pain. I can see my strength gains where I'm on the meds because the pain is not limiting me. It's encouraging when I get to see the gains. Sometimes it's really hard to keep training when pain limits, and it's discouraging. I can't count the number of times I have prayed for healing so that I can simply enjoy my training in the process. But he has not answered that prayer yet. I know he can, but he chooses not to. But I need to learn that my encouragement should not come from my performance or how I'm feeling. My encouragement comes from God, in that he allows me to do what I am able to do. My encouragement comes from the motivation and dedication to training and getting better despite how I feel. Sometimes I can hardly move, but when I start my training session, he blesses me with the ability to move easier, just long enough to get done what needs to be done. Feelings are transitory and don't last. Feelings change with the direction of the wind, but where I find my encouragement is much deeper and has roots." So I feel like that was something that I'm really kind of trying to learn. And it's not to rely on my output and my performance and quote unquote my emotions and how I feel my training is going, because like I said, it's transitory. Sometimes you feel good, sometimes you don't feel good. And if you have enough times where things just don't feel good, but that's how we adapt. That's how we build adaptation. It's this progressive overload. Things are hard, hard, hard. Then you roll it back a little bit, and then just push, 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 roll it back a little bit. This is how we adapt. This is how we build fitness, and this is how we build endurance. but there are going to be workouts that don't feel good. I'm trying to break this habit of trying to feel good all the time, and really to not necessarily just pray for like, oh, I just want to enjoy things. Because in my mind, it's like, well, what is joy then? Am I thinking that, I want to be happy, and I want to be confident and I want to have like this positive emotion? Because having that all the time is completely unrealistic. That's, you should not have the expectation that you're going to feel that way all the time. So when you don't feel that way, what do you do? Do you become discouraged and just you start to dread training, or you hate it and you start to talk negative about yourself? Where it's just like, I'm not progressing. I'm not enjoying this. I don't like it. And it's making me frustrated because I'm investing all this time and I'm not seeing the gains that I want. But what I'm learning is that my enjoyment should come from the fact that I'm dedicated and motivated and that I'm able to do what he is allowing me to do. He's allowing me to do what I love and to participate in a sport that has given me so much over the years, and the fact that I don't want to take that for granted. So I can't keep trying to seek happiness and joy all the time. I want to be content and fine with whatever I'm feeling in that moment. Be present and be okay with it and be able to manage those emotions and talk through them and handle them well. Because it's like I said, it's not going to be easy all the time. So those are some of that was one of the insights that I had from this week, is really kind of just leaning on my faith and leaning on God to really kind of like help me through this, because I know that I can't do it outside of his will anyway. So it's not like I control anything. So this is his plan. This isn't my plan. He gave me the wisdom to build the plan, but ultimately, this is his work. So my next little piece that I wrote was from Saturday. So this was on the 6th. This talks a little bit about kind of like my experience at this race and kind of the issues that I was just dealing with mentally. So here it is. So from the 6th, struggling mentally right now with work issues. It feels like it's all consuming in my mind. It was really hot and humid today. I attempted to attend the Patriot Ole Triathlon in Williamsburg to do some promoting of the podcast. I was there for a while, but I really struggled while there. I struggled to find the mental and emotional bandwidth to put myself out there and start conversations. I walked around and just couldn't bring myself to walk up to someone and start a conversation. So, little caveat, as I said, I'm an extreme introvert. I don't work well in big groups. I have a hard time kind of like starting conversations and things, but it's something that I'm working on, and I'm seeing progress and improvement there, but it takes a lot of effort for me. So, just a little side note. Here we go. I ended up just calling it quits and walked back to the car to start my training for the day. There was a couple parked next to me, and somehow I started up a conversation with them and handed them 2 bookmarks. I went on the run course during the race and encouraged others while I did my run. There was someone I passed on the course, and she ended up being parked right next to me as well. So when she was at her car, I struck up a conversation, and she ended up previously living in Haines City, Florida. So we chatted about Ironman Florida 70.3. I handed her a bookmark for the podcast. And so I passed out a total of 3 bookmarks, but I feel the conversations were quality and were done at a time where I did not think I could do it. I'm happy with my run paces. I ran an average of 11:32 pace, which is good for me. I have to control the negative thoughts in my head that tell me, quote, "You weren't as good as you were in your runs this week. You must be regressing rather than progressing," end quote. I said, that is irrational thinking and steals my joy. I was purposeful during my run today, and that is what matters most. A lot of times as athletes, so that was the end of my journal entry. So a lot of times as athletes, we have to see progress. And so that means that, whatever paces we ran earlier in the week, we expect to either see those same paces or faster ones. And when you don't see the faster pace, then you start to question. It's like, oh, well, am I getting fitter? Am I losing fitness? Am I doing something wrong? No, chances are you're not doing anything wrong. Fatigue is cumulative. Keep in mind. And, this also alludes to the fact that I had an extremely stressful week this week mentally. And I was listening to a podcast this week, and something that I learned is that the brain uses 20% of our energy levels, which I found fascinating. So I don't know how accurate it was, but it makes complete sense to me, because when I have a mentally draining day, I physically feel exhausted. And so it makes sense. And so when you're stressed from work and then you start to see this regression in training, it starts to explain the story a little bit. The body doesn't differentiate between physical stress, mental stress, emotional stress, life stress. It's not like you have like these little partition buckets of stress that you can pull from, to where it's just like, oh, well, my training stress is kind of like the bucket is running low, so I need to pour some over from here in order to fill this back up. It doesn't work. It just pulls from the same bucket. So if you have like a completely stressful week, or you're traveling a lot for work or whatever, or you're a parent and then the kids are running crazy and you're just being pulled in from all different directions, and your training feels harder, then it's not that you're not training efficiently or effectively and that you're not getting stronger. It's that these other facets of your life are impacting the quality of your training. And so this is something that I have to learn as well, even as a coach. And I've known this for a long time, and it's something that I tell my athletes as well. So I have to remind myself the same advice that I give my athletes. And that's, hey, you're not regressing. You're still progressing. Even though the pace may not have felt or may not have been faster, but I can say that I felt better finishing that run. I got back to the car and was about to start my bike session, and I didn't feel gas or anything, even though it was like really hot and really humid, and I was out in like the direct sun, and I should have felt a little bit more gassed if I had ran harder, but I purposefully didn't, and was just out there just kind of like trying to enjoy the environment and try and encourage others while they ran their race. I feel like it fueled me a little bit and kind of like filled my cup. And so, I'm trying to tell myself, no, you did not become weaker by the end of the week, because, the pace that you saw during your run segments were slower than the pace that you ran that same run, the same structured run earlier in the week where you ran faster. I have to be okay with that. And it's a learning experience and something that I continue to work on year after year, race after race. And it's the mental side of training. So it's something that we all have to work on. There's many, many facets of endurance sports, endurance racing, and the mental part is a significant part. And it's a muscle that you have to build. And it's one that I'm still building even after all these years of doing this. So I think that draws it to a conclusion here tonight. So thank you guys so much for spending your time with me and allowing me to kind of be vulnerable and kind of share my experience over the week, things that I've learned, things that went well, things that didn't go well, things that I'm trying to improve on, some things I'm trying to hold on to. So again, this was week 2 of the Ironman Florida 70.3 training, and I'm looking forward to a good week going forward. Next week, there's a little bit of a bump next week, and so we're going to see some increase in duration for some of my sessions, and so I'm ready to roll, feeling good, feeling ready, and I will see you all again next week. And thank you so much again for listening. Please go out to the Tabula Rasa Racing website, take a look at my workouts, download the PDF. You're free to use whatever it is that you want. You can adjust it for your own current fitness and your own goals and expectations of yourself, but feel free. So I'm throwing all this content out there for free, even though, I am a coach and this is my business. I'm giving this stuff to you. So if I can help you, I'm happy to do so. So again, thank you. This was week 2, and we'll see you all again. And happy training, everyone. I'll see you at the end of week 3. Good night.